Smile
are.
again. Everybody
Scan
get ready
everybody.
to smile again.
Or do you have
All
this?
right.
This is one of the challenges of taking an online course. You know, normally in the classroom environment, we would just be each other's audience, but so I have to enlist my neighbors.
Okay. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
That's no problem. Thank you. Thank you for coming in tonight. This time of the year, you know, I sometimes think about how hot it is, and I think about the people who lived here years before there was air conditioning or any kind of golf courses, these kind of things that we're living with today. So I did some research and I learned a lot about the Waccamaw Natives who lived in the area. I'm going to share with you tonight some of that research about how they were first contacted with the Spanish, later how they came in contact with the colonists, and eventually integrated with our society, but still existing today. They have their own website. It's called Waccamaw Indians US, and from that they describe how they used to live in the area. They domesticated animals, and they would domesticate ducks and geese and chickens, and they even domesticated deer. And when they domesticated the deer, they would milk the deer and make cheese.
Oh.
So I've never had deer cheese, but I'm sure it's got a certain flavor to all its own. In addition to the animals, they also had both private and communal gardens, and everyone worked in the gardens, including the chiefs. And they would grow pumpkins, kidney beans, lima beans, squash, gourd, melons, and tobacco. So a little later on, in 1520, there was an ethnographer that discovered, his name was John Swanton, discovered some information about a Spaniard named Francisco Gordillo, who was commissioned to explore this area. And he came across the ocean and met up with his cousin Pedro de Quesos, who happened to be a slave trader down in the Bahamas. Now, he was trying really hard to enslave the people there. It wasn't working out so well. So his cousin joined him, and they came up the Waccamaw River, and lo and behold, they come across the native people of the Waccamaw. Well, they tricked some of them onto the boat and took them down to Hispaniola, which, as you know now, is Haiti and the Dominican Republic. But unfortunately, none of them lived more than 2 years under that environment. There's a lot of disease that they just weren't accustomed to at the time. So later on, there was still a small population that had escaped slavery, of course, because the area that they covered was everywhere from Winyah Bay up to Lake Waccamaw, which is in North Carolina. In the 1600s, the colonists started arriving from Virginia, and they were, coming to the area. They would track fur, they would, develop the land, and so they found themselves in competition with the Europeans that were moving in. And unfortunately, all the diseases they brought also put a strain on the population, and they dwindled. To about 1712, all this competition kind of comes to a head, and some Indians in the northern part of South Carolina band together in the Yemassee War of 1712. This war lasted from 1712 to 1715. The natives did not win that one, and those that survived were enslaved and eventually found themselves working on the plantations. So they've had it rough. And so that was about early 1700s. By 1752, remember, we were still under British rule, and King George II freed all the native population. But of course, the people who owned these slaves said, well, they're obviously colored, so they're not, I don't have to let these slaves go, or you have to compensate me for my property. So this fight with classification continues because the U.S. Census doesn't even recognize Native Americans until 1870, which was even after the Emancipation Proclamation. When we started doing some more research, Forrest Hazel talks about the formation of the Demery settlement, and this is an area just outside of Aynor. Today it's known as Dog Bluff. But the Demery settlement was formed when John Demery, who was classified legally as a free person of color, which is what happened to most of the natives, he marries Elizabeth Hardwick in 1809. In 1813, they come down and buy 300 acres on the east side of the PD River for $50. And this land is what becomes the Demery settlement. It grows over the years, and we start having other families such as the Demerys, the Hatchers, and the Turners. They built a school, and they had several churches, And in 1923, Horry County tried to classify their school as a colored school to save money. And the people withdrew their children from the school and basically forced the county to reclassify it as white, so that everybody came in. So the ethnology of the people of the Waccamaw tribe has always kind of been a mystery to the people who live around them. But today it's led by Chief Harold Hatcher. He was a descendant from the Demery settlement, and he established a nonprofit organization in 1995. And 10 years later, in 2005, the state finally recognized tribes, and the Waccamaw tribe and the PD tribe were the first tribes to be recognized by the state. So I hope you've enjoyed some of this research. I've enjoyed sharing it with you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those afterward. But just kind of, when you're out on the river, think about the Waccamaw people and all the struggles that they had to put up with. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.